When do you expect an agreement with the EU on this issue?
That's impossible to say at this stage. There are new parliamentary elections in Switzerland happening later this year, before Christmas. The new parliament in the EU has to get its feet under the table and decide where it's going forward. So at the moment, that's impossible to say.
But you do expect an agreement, or could you put a likelihood on that in percentage terms, maybe?
Look, we're hoping for an agreement. I can't put a percentage number on it for the simple reason that it is very much a political issue, and it's not an easy one, because the various elements of a framework agreement with Switzerland are fairly complicated, and this issue has been going on for many, many years between Switzerland and the EU, and the negotiations at the moment are stalled. And until new people come in to lead those negotiations on both sides, I think it's impossible to say when a breakthrough is to be expected. Certainly we hope for one. I don't think it's a good idea to limit capital flows in Europe as the way the legislation is currently set up.
Are you confident that you're managing the market impact successfully?
Absolutely. It's been absolutely seamless moving across from the markets where they were set up before. It was really only a small handful of clients that weren't already connected to the Swiss exchange in any event. So we connected those clients, and we've gone from the just over 70% market share, obviously, up to closer to 100% in the meantime. But effectively, that has been the most liquid market and the market with the best spreads for a number of years anyway. So for most market participants, it hasn't been an issue at all.
What kind of growth can you look forward to, Thomas, in the Swiss stock exchange?
Well, we've seen obviously significant growth in volume since the non-equivalence was implemented. Apart from that, we are doing well on the IPO front. We've had two of the larger IPOs in Europe this year with Stadler and with Alcon. So we're quite comfortable and happy with how the Swiss market is moving forward. And certainly our issuers are very comfortable with the liquidity on the market itself.
So you've hinted there at the success of the current IPO season. What about going forward? Do you expect that momentum to continue? Do you have any signals of that at all?
Well, there are so many things that affect whether an IPO makes sense. So at this stage, yes, there are early expressions of interest, but whether they will come, in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months or 12 months, depends very much, not so much on specifically what's happening in the discussion with the EU and so on, but what's happening in the wider market and whether it's an appropriate time to do an IPO.
You're talking about at the conference, at the SIBO's conference, thriving in a hyper-connected world. What do you get from that, Thomas? I mean, what does that change for you?
For us, one of our big initiatives is really moving forward on the digitalization front, and part of that is that we believe that we will see a significant change in the way capital markets are going to work over the next, call it 10 to 15 years. It's going to take some time to implement, but I think the move to start digitalizing assets is inevitable, and we're responding to that. What that means, however, is that we need to have very close relationships, even closer than up to now as a service provider, with our clients, with our various other stakeholders, to effectively co-create this new market that is being developed.
Thomas, the equivalence issue, of course, is a big one for the UK as well as we head towards Brexit. What advice do you have for those negotiations, or any thoughts on how that might pan out?
Well, I think the focus really has to be in all of the negotiations, not so much on what is the relationship with the EU. The EU has its own priorities. It's about Europe, and the competition for Europe as an attractive place for both investors as well as issuers is against what is going on in America and what is going on in Asia. So I think the common interest has to be, how do we get to a European solution that creates a single capital market with plenty of liquidity across the markets and free capital flows. And I think in all of the discussions that the UK is having with the EU, that still has to be the ultimate goal.